Some say our planet is connected by one body of water, one ocean. When people started conserving wild places, we focused on the land. It's only recently we began to protect our oceans, and we've got a lot of catching up to do. Up here on shore, all looks well, but we're just now learning that the world's oceans are in danger. The only way to reverse this trend is to better understand what's in the balance. Here lies the birthplace of all living things. They're called hydrothermal vents, where tectonic plates spread apart in the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans. 1,000 fathoms beneath the sea, in utter blackness, these vents explode like submerged smokestacks, spewing the most basic of earthly elements. Space may not be the final frontier after all. In fact, we know more about the moon than we do about the oceans, and the sooner we pursue these last great mysteries of nature, the better chance we have to preserve and protect them. I'm Olivia Newton-John, and this is One World. Coming up on One World.
Here, like nowhere else in the world, you can have a relationship where animals are fearless. They have no fear of humans whatsoever, and they have no protection against you. They have no defenses. If you make a decision about management, the next day you can almost see the impact of that decision.
It's very vulnerable because it evolved in complete isolation. Man arrived here only a few hundred years ago. Changes are happening fast. We've got to preserve what's still here. This is an amazing wildlife sanctuary, an amazing ecosystem. We want to keep it that way.
One World with Olivia Newton-John is presented by the Ford Motor Company, proud sponsors of the America's Cup, and made possible in part by the generous support of One World Challenge, pursuing the Cup in the name of the health of the world's oceans. Keep the course, guys.
We'll be right back.
Hello and welcome to One World. I'm Olivia Newton-John, and these are the beautiful Galapagos Islands, the land of Charles Darwin, 600 miles or 1,000 kilometers from mainland Ecuador. There's probably no better natural laboratory in the world than here. Its famous wildlife, of course, inspired Darwin's theory of evolution. But today, the islands are evolving fast. Just 50 years ago, there were only 500 people here. Now there's 20,000, and 60,000 people are visiting every year. The pressures on the ecosystem are growing. It's an entirely new struggle for life that Darwin never could have imagined.
Darwin's theory of evolution is based on three simple concepts. 1. That individual members of any species vary somewhat from one another. 2. That individual variation is somewhat hereditary, being transmitted from generation to generation. And 3. That organisms multiply at a rate which exceeds the capacity of the environment to carry them, the inevitable consequence that many must die. This is essential to the engine, the natural selection. Clearly, the struggle for life that Darwin once wrote about now includes humans as well. In fact, that may be what's most striking when you visit here, the infusion of people. From all the television programs done on this place, one would think that the only creatures here are lizards and birds and sea lions. But sharing these islands are shopkeepers, tour boat operators, people who work the hotels, fish the waters, and raise their kids. The towns of Cristobal and Porto Eora are actually bustling little communities. They even have a discotheque here. I'm embarrassed to say every Monday night is Grease Night. They call it Vaselina.
With Galapagos, Anybody who doesn't know should know that this is one of the most important places on the planet. There's nothing like it anywhere else. We have a great advantage over Australia or other archipelagos because we haven't lost nearly as much of the biodiversity. 95% of the species are still here. We want to keep it that way.
It's really the whole ecosystem here is particularly interesting. Fortunately, the impact of man to date has been relatively slight, but lately, over the past decade, there's been rapidly increasing numbers of tourists and fishermen working in the Galapagos marine reserves, and so there's more human stresses on the environment now.
Me crié en la isla San Cristóbal. Llegué a San Cristóbal de 7 años de edad. El resto de mi vida la he vivido aquí en Galápagos. Mi vida ha sido casi la pesca. Al momento represento como presidente de la cooperativa de pesca de aquí de Puerto Ayora. Y desde el tiempo que yo he vivido en Galápagos, realmente los cambios son demasiado acelerados, ¿no? Ya, si consideramos de que antes Galápagos tenía una mínima cantidad de habitantes, al momento esa cantidad se ha elevado tanto, sobre todo es tan notorio aquí en Santa Cruz, ¿no?
As the fisheries decline on the mainland, what is the connection between the fisheries here and the Galapagos? Are more of the fishermen coming here?
We do have a bit of, well, quite a lot of pressure from the industrial fishing companies from mainland Ecuador and worldwide. Many more fishermen are coming into here to try to use the species and the resources left here in the marine reserve.
I believe that you now have second and third generation fishermen here. No?
Yes, that's one of the main problems with the Galapagos Marine Reserve. Many other places worldwide, the fishermen truly know their ecosystem. Galapagos human settlers came in 1950s, so back then we just have probably 1 or 2 generations of fishermen. We're trying to get all the stakeholders to think long term. As they understand the value of the marine reserve, I think we're going to be in a very good position.
There's been a big boom, a big rise in ecotourism. And when people come to this beautiful place, what do you hope they leave here with in their hearts?
Una de las características fundamentales de las Islas Galápagos es justamente por el contacto que quieren tener los turistas, un contacto íntimo con la naturaleza, con los animales. Ellos han hecho una relación muy fuerte con Galápagos después de su visita y siempre están pendientes de Galápagos, nos ayudan en muchos proyectos de conservación.
Tourism can work alongside the ecology and everything is in balance. Is that how you feel?
Por supuesto. Aquí en Galápagos el turismo puede apoyar a la conservación del medio ambiente y somos capaces, el ser humano puede vivir con el medio ambiente si él lo quiere. Galápagos es una excepción a nivel del Ecuador. El dinero que viene a Galápagos autofinancia todas las actividades que hay en Galápagos.
The special law of Galapagos creates a special regime within Ecuador for Galapagos. So it's saying that all the normal national laws apply, but only to a certain extent. One of the things that it allowed Galapagos to do is become sustainable in terms of financing itself, using tourist revenue to directly finance the management and conservation of the islands. So what the special law does is saying for every $100 that you as a tourist coming in pays when you come in, that is divided up in accordance with the needs for management of the islands. So for the first time, tourism is actually paying for really serious management issues. Those special laws include things like immigration. So within a country, you're actually saying individuals, residents within that country now are restricted in terms of coming to live in Galapagos. So they've put a cap on how many people can come.
Within a country, to suddenly set up these barriers is a major change for the way people live and what they're used to. So there is also a big educational element to this.
The special law of Galapagos created the marine reserve. It created the legal framework for people being involved in decision making. We could talk about the first arrivals of animals to the Galapagos and working out how to adapt themselves. The same has happened to this community. It's an immigrant community, and we had 2 decades of decisions being made on the mainland upon the people here. All the decisions coming from on top. The people on the mainland who have no idea what life here is like, and there was a great resistance to that. The model for decision making that was in place would have really led to a collapse of the resources for the future generations. And the only way people could actually have an influence over those decisions was through aggressive political behavior. And so what we have is a 40-year model of going into the streets, throwing stones, burning tires, changing leaders to try and influence a decision.
But clearly getting the community involved from the start is essential. You can't resolve natural resource management conflicts without the community being involved.
What we've seen now is what it can achieve. It can achieve something incredible, creating the second largest marine reserve in the world. The Galapagos Islands are normally known as Darwin's laboratory for natural evolution. And what we're really working on here is a laboratory for social evolution.
When One World returns, we'll see how the lessons learned in the Galapagos are helping us to protect marine reserves everywhere.
To me, Galapagos is a really fascinating place, and I think there's a lot for the world to find out about what is happening in this particular area.
We'll be right back. This is the fishing village of Iangu, a few hours from Guayaquil, Ecuador. Fishermen peddle their catch, and magnificent frigate birds get the scraps. The poverty here is profound. The only thing these villages have is the sea. No pesca, no vida. Without fish, there is no life. And as the fisheries continue to decline on the Ecuadorian mainland, the migration west into the Galapagos continues. Despite a special law that restricts further migration and a 40-mile buffer zone around the islands that gives local fishermen proprietary ownership of the resources, the encroachment continues. New boats ring the reserve, including the illegal fishermen like this Costa Rican vessel under arrest in Puerto Eora. Enforcement is a challenge.
El caso de estas embarcaciones se puede decir hasta lo que pasa en estas embarcaciones está un poquito, para nosotros un poquito frustrante, ¿no? Porque se localizan, se capturan estas embarcaciones con toda la evidencia, ¿no?, del ilícito cometido, pero por lo regular casi siempre evaden la sanción. El parque de pronto quiere aplicar la sanción, pero en cambio siempre en medio de los gobiernos hay personas que interfieren en esta decisión, ¿no?, aún yéndose contra las leyes establecidas. Entonces permiten que estas embarcaciones zarpen sin que realmente se cumpla con lo que el parque quiere hacer, o sea, ejecutar la ley, ¿no?
What kind of resources do you need from the government to protect the park?
Empezamos por las herramientas jurídicas. Necesitamos que haya un apoyo jurídico para que se respeten las leyes que están predispuestas para Galápagos. Un apoyo judicial de parte del gobierno nacional. Es muy necesario que se cumplan las leyes como se han establecido.
The birds we're looking at now are frigate birds, the magnificent frigate bird, and the displaying ones with the red pouch are the males. The males inflate their gular sac when they're trying to get the attention of a female. They're sitting in their nest, and when their females overflying the area, they do their courtship noises, they display, they shake their wings. They get excited and they try to call the attention of the female. If she likes them and like the place where they are sitting, she will come and join them. Both males and females share the care of the offspring. You can see some young babies, the white fluffy ones.
Cuando llega un turista, el primer contacto que tienen es con el guía. El guía les dice las normas y reglas con las cuales tienen que visitar. El manejo turístico que hacemos en el Parque Nacional Galápagos, nosotros lo exportamos esta tecnología hacia otras áreas silvestres, en Latinoamérica y en el mundo.
Here in Otzimer, we also find a big colony of nesting blue-footed boobies. They are dancing and courting, females and males trying to get a couple, and they will form a family like that.
Almost all living things here arrived here, whether it be reptiles on rafts drifting over from the mainland and taking hold here, or seabirds making the long flight across the Pacific. The islands have always imported life. And similarly, the people of the Galapagos rely pretty heavily on what comes by sea and air. One of their lifelines is tourism, accommodating the 60,000 people who visit each year. The other part is the ocean, the marine resources. But as the Galapagos became a World Heritage Site in 1978 and then a biological marine reserve in 1996, these rich waters, in a way, now belong to all of us.
The whole revelation about natural selection really was unveiled and uncovered at the Galapagos. The Galapagos are a biosphere reserve, and Ecuador and everybody else recognize that this is an international treasure, an international jewel. In that sense, it's a public trust asset. It's part of the global commons. So the products of the oceans, the fisheries, the whales, the animals, the oceans belong to all of the people of the planet.
La conservación en el mundo se ha dado recientemente a mediados del siglo pasado. A nivel mundial, la creación de reservas marinas es una excepción. Galápagos es una de ellas. Se crea a partir de una ley especial que es creada en el año de 1998. Sin lugar a duda, es un gran reto para Galápagos y para la humanidad entera.
What exactly is the role of the Darwin Station here in the Galapagos?
The Darwin Station is here to support conservation in Galapagos in whatever form that takes. And we provide a lot of support to the Park Service here, who are largely involved in the management of the Galapagos Marine Reserve and the Galapagos Terrestrial National Park.
We provide the scientific background for the management part to come up with a sound and specific management plan for species such as lobster and sea cucumbers and different other fisheries. So they can come up with a very good management strategy that could identify the needs of all the stakeholders, tourism, fisheries and science and conservation.
Realmente la ley de Galápagos, o sea, nosotros pensamos de que es buena, ¿no? Pero desde luego hay ciertas cosas que nosotros mismos muchas veces como sector pesquero nos hemos quejado, ¿no? Necesitamos de que esa ley se mantenga, porque realmente si la ley de Galápagos desaparece, también desaparecería Galápagos.
We're talking about local people taking control over decisions, but not just the local users, but together with the scientists in the national park, actually coming up with the rules. And if people come up with the rules, then the theory is that they're going to comply with the rules.
I think that the role of the park, the station, and all the stakeholders are yielding very good results. We do have a bit of problems every now and then as everything is starting, but I think in a few years' time, the Galapagos Marine Reserve is probably one of the best examples worldwide, how to keep your resources, how to keep people happy, and how to think globally.
Next on One World, we'll see how the America's Cup is pursued in the name of our world's oceans.
The concept is one very much of having a global team, a global focus. We live in a global village place, and why not think internationally?
I think the team has really embraced this environmental program that is part of One World Challenge, and I think a lot of the values, caring for the environment, are consistent with values of sportsmanship.
One World will be right back. Keep it here.
The unique aspect to the America's Cup is the technical revolution and evolution that happens in this game. I mean, essentially the yachts have been the same design rule for the last 10 years, and yet they go somewhere between 3 and 5% faster each cup go-round, and we're already seeing gains well in excess of that. So I think that you're certainly going to see this evolution continue on, and it's the small things that seem to be particularly important, doing all the small things well. I think the America's Cup always has been an international competition, and you know, uniquely we have a global team, a global focus, and as an event there has always been a great international mix. The America's Cup is very much an event for the whole world.
Coming up, does that anyway?
With Craig McCaw behind us in his history of work in the environment, all of his businesses have a global view to them. He really doesn't believe in borders. He really is a guy that thinks globally. And when we decided to put the team together, he was very, very interested in getting sailors from all over the world. The focus was going to be on the environment, and the importance was to get a good message across. You needed to get individuals from different countries. Our intention certainly would be to partner with some of the other environmental groups in New Zealand and the United States, and as the One World Fund grows, we plan to support them, work with them the best way we can, and try to continue on even after the America's Cup, try and continue on One World's work.
You see sometimes the damage that's done to oceans and what happens out there. I mean, we're very focused to ensure that our participation in America's Cup can maybe change one person's view of throwing out some rubbish or throwing some plastic overboard or whatever the case may be. This is a good thing for the environment.
It's right behind, it's unbelievable. And then I looked up and saw like 6 iguanas and the mockingbird.
No, it's really cool though because they look like in harmony together. That's how we should be.
Having had the privilege to visit these beautiful, incredible Galapagos Islands, I totally understand how Darwin must have felt. The fearlessness of the animals here, the trust they show in us, a trust we don't always deserve. That trust has instilled in the people of the Galapagos a commitment, a responsibility to preserve this fragile eco-haven. Darwin's careful observations have helped shape our understanding of the natural world. It's now up to us to work together, be better stewards, be even more careful in how we observe and preserve our planet. It is, after all, our only world. I'm Olivia Newton-John.